Welcome back, Freshwater Fishing Novices, new viewers. This is the Freshwater Fishing Novice YouTube channel. If you're just starting to learn how to fish, or you're new to fishing as an adult, maybe because your parents didn't teach you, that's kind of why this channel gets started. Because I, as an adult, was trying to learn, couldn't find anything, everything was way over my head, and I just wanted someone to explain what the lures, what the line was. Today, we're going to be talking about wake baits, and why they're a good lure for freshwater fishing novices, or noobs like me and you. What's the deal with wake baits? Where does this lure, where does a wake bait swim? Would I put it in the top water category? Yes and no. It can be on the top water. It could be fished on the surface, but it can also be, you can also fish it just under the subsurface. So pretty typically, wake baits go from 1 to 1.5, 2 feet. They don't go much deeper than that. You might be saying, why the heck is that good? You know, you look at a crankbait, a deep diving crankbait, that goes way down. Square bill, that goes down like 4, 5, 6 feet. Now, why the heck would you want a wake bait? Well, maybe you're trying to fish over something. Should I draw a picture? Should probably draw a picture. Yeah. So say that's the water, and then you got some grass, and this is only 2 feet. Fish will be hanging out in that grass, and they'll be ambushing up. So if you toss your lure in and it goes down only 2 feet and this grass is 2.5 feet or whatever, you're barely running it over the top. That's a mess. Or if the grass is higher and it's really close to the surface, but it's still, say, a foot below the water, you can run it right on the surface of the water. So that's why a wake bait is fantastic for beginners, because you're not going to get as much grass on it. If you tried to throw a square bill into that situation, you get all kind of mucked up. You might be saying, well, couldn't I just throw a top water like a spook? You could. But a wake bait has a different action. And why I'm telling you guys about wake baits, you girls, every angler, fisher out there, why I'm telling you about wake baits? Well, one, you can fish them where other stuff will get normally hung up. So as a beginner or a novice, that's going to help you not hook up with stuff. The other thing is it floats, so it's not going to be sinking, so you're not going to deal with the treble hooks getting stuck in stuff as much. You can also throw it 3 seasons out of the year. So typically wake baits, they're going to work spring, summer, and fall. Really a lot in fall, because that's when you'll see a lot of fish busting on top, kind of the end of the season of the year. So that's a bonus, because three months out of the year, well, 3 seasons out of the year, you can fish this lure. It's going to work better sometimes, better than, sometimes it will work better than not. The wake bait also works in clear water, dirty water, and stained water. So it's kind of a good overall bait to have, especially if you want to cover that top column of the water body. So maybe you don't want to use a top water. Maybe you don't want to use a frog, a plug, or a spook, or a popper. Instead, you could use a wake bait. And you could even fish it subsurface, down to like maybe 2 feet. So kind of a bonus. You covered that water column part, or that part of the water column. And now now you only have to fill your fishing arsenal with, 2 other lures. So if you're going out, that should suffice for your top water bite. And then you need a mid water column lure, and then you need a bottom contact lure. So you want to keep your 3 bases covered. But this covers one of those bases. Let's talk about the rod position and why that matters. Actually, let's talk about all your gear you're going to need for this. So the good thing, if you're going to throw a wake bait, say a smaller wake bait, you probably don't need special gear. If you have, like, let's say a moderate rod and it's a medium action. No, wait, a medium rod with moderate action is what I meant to say. If you have a medium rod with moderate action, you should be good to go with one of those smaller wake baits. So you just toss that out on top, let it float, crank it back, no big deal. You're doing your job. So that's a bonus. Okay, so we got the rod. Your reel, it could be spinning, it could be casting, doesn't matter. Really personal preference right there. The line's gonna make a difference. Now, since it's a top water or a floating lure, I wanna use floating line. So a braid, it doesn't have much stretch. Now the reason you want that moderate rod that we talked about a second ago is because the rod's gonna bend over. It's gonna give, it's gonna fight the fish. These wake baits have treble hooks. So with treble hooks, you want more give in the rod, so it gives you more leeway to land the fish. So braid really isn't a good thing to pair on a moderate rod that's gonna give. You want line that's gonna give you some stretch. Now, in the past, I've talked about fluorocarbon and mono. If you don't know about that, I'll link a video about line types, so you guys can watch that if you want. So you anglers can watch that, afterwards if you want. But fluorocarbon sinks real quick. Fluorocarbon, just go over the line real quick. Braid floats, no stretch. Fluorocarbon sinks, but it's got some stretch, almost invisible. Braid, very visible. Monofilament. Monofilament tons of stretch, and it floats. So it floats like braid, which is good for topwater, especially if you want more give. Your rod's gonna give, your line's gonna give a little bit more, so it's gonna help you land that fish on those treble hooks. So one more time real quick, medium rod, moderate action, spinning or bait casting reel, up to you, personal preference. But the line you're gonna wanna use is probably monofilament, just to make it easier landing these fish. So now that we talked about line, let's talk about retrieving this lure. The way you hold your rod, the position. Say you toss your lure out, and now you're standing here. Your hands are probably like this. You're standing there like that with your feet like this. Now, you can hold your rod straight up and down like that. What that position of that rod is going to do, it's going to keep your wake bait on top of the water. You can slow reel it, and it will just wobble on the surface. And that's what that high angle is going to do. It's going to keep your lure more towards the top of the water column. Now, if you want your wake bait to go down a little deeper, in comparison, what you're going to do, let's move this guy's arms. Now, in comparison, if you want that lure to run deeper, you're going to hold your rod tip almost straight down at the water, and you can vary that. You know what I mean? So you could be holding it here, here, here. So lower in the water column, middle of the water column, as far as where this lure is going to run in that 2-foot section, a little bit higher, and then top. So the direction or the angle, so the angle of your rod makes a big difference using this lure. So if you go out to fish this type of lure, keep that in mind. Oh, I want to keep it on the top of the water. Hold your rod up. Now, if you want to dive down and just get over that grass that's just under the water, hold the tip of your rod down while you're retrieving it. So here, this might be just an opinion piece right here, but I want to show you what some wake baits look like, what I consider wake baits, and how it can get a little, do I want to use the word convoluted? It can get a little mucky. So typically, a wake bait, let me just hold that up, I'll zoom in. You can see this wake bait, looks like a crankbait almost. But this bill right here is almost at a 90-degree angle. It's just kicked out a little bit. So maybe 80, 75% angle. But what that does, instead of diving down, it's just gonna act like a barge, and that lure is just gonna kick back and forth on the top of the water column. Here's the first wake bait I ever got. You can see that bill, same angle. And that just, it floats. This is a big one too. That's Pro Shops makes that. That's an egg wake bait. Huge. That's one of the first ones I got. That's a lie. The first one I got was this guy. It's this little rat. Can't remember who makes that. There's cloth in between this. It's jointed. Makes that clacky sound, but you can see the bill's the same. Now, is this a swim bait or is it a wake bait? Well, is it a little of both? It's kind of swimming as opposed to this guy who's just solid and it's just making a wake. But I consider this as a wake bait. That may be a personal mistake on my side. Let me know if you guys think that's a wake bait or you think it's a swim bait. Let me know down in the comments below. Now, let me show you another wake bait right here. This is a real little one. I got it last year. Didn't have too much success on it, but I barely threw it in its defense. But you can see that lure. Again, almost 90 degrees. That's a little more kicked out. But again, it just kicks on the surface. Now, my problem is that I hear these kind of lures where they're jointed, often referred to as swim baits. But I don't think this is a swim bait because I have different swim baits, right? And they're jointed. Now, not necessarily a floater. I think this one actually is. But a lot of them, swim bait, not a wake bait. Now, let me show you. I'm sure everyone, if you haven't heard of this lure, I just picked it up. I'll show it to you right here. It's just the Spro 50. It's a rat. If you haven't heard of it, it's pretty popular. Actually, I think they might have discontinued it, so I might have got one of the last ones in stock. I don't know. Oh. But I've wanted one of these lures for over 3 years. Now let me show you this ridiculous lure. The only reason I bought that lure is because this lure hooked me up. The first year I threw this, I thought this was a big lure. And I got this guy this year. So the Spro 50, you can see, that looks more like a swim bait, but it's still a wake bait. So I feel like swim baits and wake baits, some of them can be interchanged. What do you think? Popular opinion? Unpopular opinion? But this is supposed to be the jam. And I hear swim bait fishermen talk about this Spro 50 all the time. But is it a wake bait? It's making a wake. It's on top of the water. It works just like one of these guys. It's just got a separation. So I'm going to leave that up to you. What do you guys think? As novices like me, do you think that Spro 50 is classified as a wake bait because of that bill and the fact that it sits on a wake when it is retrieved? I mean, that's a traditional wake bait, or like that guy right there. The other thing I want to say is a wake bait doesn't have to be shaped like that or like that. Or like that. It could be a long, skinny wake bait. I think Rebel makes one of them. I don't know. Anyway, I hope all you anglers are encouraged to go out this year. Purchase at least one wake bait just to try out and mess around with. Let me know how it goes this season. If you guys got any luck on them. You can throw it over structure. You can say there's a submerged tree underwater. 2 feet of water above it. Throw that wake bait right over the top of it and just slowly crank it back on the top of the water, and a fish might come out and hit it. Throw it around docks. Don't throw it into the trees. That's a silly idea. But fish it around structure. Fish it around grass. Fish it around docks. Fish it around wood. The beauty of the wake bait is that it floats, so you don't have to worry about it hooking up with grass underneath the water. Or sticks. If they're underneath the water, this lure is going to float above it and draw the fish in. That V-wake is pretty magical for catching fish. I want to thank everyone for watching my video this week. You guys can do all the YouTube stuff if you want. You know what to do. Click, clack, ding dong, smash that stuff. Anyway, thanks for watching this week. I hope everyone has a great weekend. I'll catch you next week.